There's a kid you probably remember. Maybe from school. Maybe from your own childhood mirror. He never raised his hand first. Never needed to be the loudest voice in the room. Never fought for attention. And somehow, that made people uncomfortable. Because we live in a world that reads silence as a problem. As something broken. As a warning sign that needs fixing. But what if everything we assumed about that quiet kid was wrong? What if the child everyone overlooked was actually the one seeing everything most clearly? Here's the uncomfortable truth no one talks about. Quiet kids aren't absent from the room. They're more present than anyone else in it. They're just present differently. And that difference, that tiny, misunderstood gap, can shape a person's entire life. Their confidence. Their relationships. Their sense of self-worth. Their willingness to ever speak up again. This isn't a video about being shy. This is about what happens inside a mind that was never given permission to be exactly what it was. Think about the last time a room went silent. What did people do? Someone cracked a joke. Someone checked their phone. Someone started talking just to fill the space. Because silence, to most people, feels like failure. But for the quiet kid, silence was never empty. It was where they lived. It was the space between observations. The pause before a thought crystallized. The room where they stored everything the world kept throwing at them without warning. Most people perform in life. The quiet kid studies it. And that distinction right there? That's where the psychology gets fascinating. Because you don't just quietly exist in a world built for noise without it leaving marks on you. Deep ones. Permanent ones. The kind that follow you into adulthood in ways you might not even recognize yet. Here's something nobody told the quiet kid. The world wasn't designed for them. Classrooms reward the first hand up, not the deepest answer. Workplaces celebrate the loudest pitch, not the most thought-through one. Social circles form around whoever controls the energy of the room. And somewhere along the way, the quiet kid received a message. Not spoken out loud. Never that honest. But felt. Deeply felt. You need to be more. More talkative. More expressive. More visible. More like everyone else who seems to move through life without this strange, heavy interior weight. So they tried to adapt. Some of them learned to perform. To wear a version of themselves that fit the room's expectations. Laughing louder than they felt. Speaking faster than they thought. Shrinking their pauses to match a world allergic to them. And nobody noticed. Because the performance was convincing. But performance has a cost. Every day spent being someone you're not is a withdrawal from something inside you. And quiet kids, the ones who spent years translating themselves for everyone else's comfort? They know that exhaustion better than anyone. But here's what's rarely discussed about the quiet kid. The danger isn't their silence. The danger is what they start to believe inside it. When you're constantly overlooked, when your idea gets ignored until someone else repeats it louder, when people assume you're fine simply because you're not making noise about not being fine, you start to build a story. And that story sounds something like this. My voice doesn't change anything. My presence isn't necessary. Taking up space is something other people do. That story is quiet. Subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly rewires how you move through the world. How much you ask for. How much you believe you deserve. And the heartbreaking part? Most quiet kids never even realize it happened. Have you ever caught yourself apologizing before you've even said anything? Shrinking before anyone pushed you? Rehearsing a thought 10 times, then deciding not to say it? Drop a yes in the comments if that hit close to home. Because that's not shyness. That's not personality. That's a wound that learned to stay quiet too. Here's what the quiet kid became. Not who the world expected. Not who the noise tried to shape them into. Something far more interesting. The quiet kid became the person who reads a room before anyone else knows there's something to read. The one who notices the tension nobody named. The one who remembers what you said 3 conversations ago because they actually listened. They became the thinker. The observer. The one whose words, when they finally arrive, carry weight that surprises everyone in the room. Because here's the truth about silence most people never learn. Silence isn't the absence of power. It's where power quietly accumulates. Every moment the quiet kid spent watching instead of performing, they were building something. A sensitivity that most people spend decades trying to develop. An instinct for truth in a world full of noise pretending to be substance. The greatest writers, the most visionary leaders, the artists who changed how we see things, so many of them started exactly here. Not at center stage, but at the edge of it. Watching. Collecting. Understanding. And there's something else worth saying. The quiet kid often became the safest person in the room. Not safe in a passive way. Safe in the rarest possible way. The kind of person others instinctively move toward when something is wrong. When life gets complicated. When someone needs to be heard rather than advised. When the noise of everyone else's opinion becomes unbearable. Think about it. Who do you call when you need someone to actually listen? It's almost never the loudest person you know. It's the one who makes you feel like time slows down around them. The one whose silence doesn't feel like judgment. The one who doesn't rush to fix you or perform empathy, they just genuinely hold space for you. That person? They were probably the quiet kid once. And what looked like a limitation all those years ago quietly became one of the most powerful human qualities there is. The capacity to make another person feel truly heard. In a world where everyone is waiting for their turn to speak, that capacity is extraordinarily rare. And extraordinarily valuable. But here's the part that matters most. None of that transformation happens automatically. Because quiet without self-awareness becomes invisible. Silence without self-worth becomes erasure. Depth without direction becomes isolation. The quiet kid has to make a choice at some point. Not the choice to become loud. Not the choice to perform or compete or finally fight for the room's attention. The choice to decide that their interior world is not a liability. That their slow, considered thoughts are not a malfunction. That the way they exist, careful, observant, deep, is not something to fix. It's something to protect. And then strategically, deliberately, unapologetically use. Because here's what nobody prepares the quiet kid for. There will come a moment, sometimes in a meeting, sometimes in a relationship, sometimes completely alone at 2 a.m., where everything they quietly collected will matter enormously. Where their ability to see clearly through complexity will be exactly what a situation needs. Where their patience, their depth, their refusal to react before understanding, will be the difference. That moment doesn't announce itself. It just arrives. And the quiet kid, now grown, will realize something quietly profound. Every year they spent feeling like they were too much on the inside and not enough on the outside was preparation. Not punishment. Not proof of brokenness. Preparation. The world needs what the quiet kid carries. It needs people who don't speak just to fill silence. People who don't lead through volume. People who can sit in discomfort long enough to actually understand it. In a culture drowning in opinions nobody thought through, the quiet mind is not a weakness. It's a form of integrity. So if you grew up being the quiet one, if you learned to make yourself smaller so others felt more comfortable, if you still catch yourself swallowing words before they reach the air, understand this. Your silence was never the problem. The problem was a world too impatient to wait for what you had to say. And you don't owe that world a performance. You owe yourself permission. Permission to speak at your own pace. To take up space without justifying it. To stop translating yourself into a language that was never built for who you actually are. To stop apologizing for the depth of you. Because depth, in the right moment, moves mountains. And mountains never needed to be loud to matter. The quiet kid didn't need to be fixed. They needed to be understood. And maybe, just maybe, this video was the beginning of that. If this resonated with something real inside you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you've spent your life being the quiet one, tell me in the comments, what's one thing you wish people had understood about you sooner? Because your answer matters. And this time, the room is listening.